Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Beyond the Gatekeepers. I am Dr. Vanessa M. Brown, and I am your moderator for this evening. I am happy to be here. I want to invite our Facebook Live audience, as well as our YouTube audience, to make sure that you share concerning this conversation on tonight. We are going to be talking about politics in racism. Amen. Politics and racism. Black health matters. And so we're excited. The politics of race, in a pandemic. Black health matters. We are excited to have with us our regulars, Bishop Yvette Flunder. She is the presiding prelate of the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries. She is also the senior pastor of City of Refuge United Church of Christ in Oakland, California. Bishop Flunder, please come on and greet the people on this evening.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Beyond the Gatekeepers. We are very glad to have you with us. It's a very important day in the history of the United States of America. Two unprecedented realities. One is in so many ways political, and the other, it addresses the realities of a pandemic, unlike anything that we have experienced, most of us in our lifetime, and certainly those of us who have been in the United States. And so we have a lot to talk about, and the common denominator that exists between the realities of the pandemic and the realities of the current political atmosphere has so much to do with racism. And it's time for us to have not just a political conversation, but a theopolitical conversation. Where is God in the middle of all of this, and what should God's people be doing, saying, thinking, praying about What is our role? We certainly do have a role and many roles, but what is the part that God wants us to play? We invite you to begin to think thoughtfully, prayerfully, and certainly engage in the opportunity to leave comments and questions and those things that will come up for us if we don't address them tonight. Lord willing, we will be able to address them and bring them up when we come back together. This is an interesting time to be alive, but I believe God's got something for all of this. God bless you and welcome.
Thank you so much, Bishop Flunder. And our next guest, and he's not a guest, he's with us pretty much every week, is Bishop Carlton D. Pearson. He's an author, a progressive spiritual teacher, and thought leader, and we're so glad to have you with us. Please greet the people tonight, Bishop.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. This may be one of the most pivotal and critical conversations we have on one of the most pivotal and critical days in recent history. The whole world is watching us live and die and live. And there's a pandemic of confusion, doubt, and distrust. We consider ourselves people of faith, but here's the big clash. The clash is between faith and science, or faith and knowledge. It doesn't have to be, but it is, because we don't have faith in anything. Many people don't even have faith in God, because God seems to have failed them throughout the ages on various points of human suffering, whether that's a plague, whether that's genocide, whether that's slavery, whether that's repeated injustices, religious indifferences. And so I've never seen in my 68 years on the planet more confusion, even among people of faith. So we have to sort through, negotiate, and navigate these very high waters right now with the thing that we grew up around, which was mama's intuition, motherwit, they called it. When people that were ignorant and yet enlightened would go into trances or have some kind of transcendent experience and come back with an answer, because then they became seers. So I'm kind of trying to pull that old way of African spiritism, if you will, and Pentecostalism into science, technology, and these modern times with politics and just ticks that are political.
Yeah, Bishop. Yes, homogenize yourself, Bishop. That's good. I like it. And so we have a guest tonight that's with us, Dr. Michael LeNoir. He's the Associate Clinical Professor at the University of California in San Francisco. He's also the Chairperson of the Board of African American Wellness Project. Dr. Michael, will you come on and greet the people for us tonight before we get into our conversation?
Well, good evening. I've heard everything has been said. This is a very pivotal day, a very pivotal time where the intersection of faith and science is critical. So we're glad to be a guest among such a distinguished group of people.
Thank you, Dr. Michael, for being here with us tonight. Back to our Beyond the Gatekeepers audience. Again, we are talking about the politics of race in a pandemic. Black Health Matters. And so I want to start off tonight by making a statement. And the statement is that the CDC put out a report, and I believe it came out on today, that the expectation of over 5,000 people to die daily starting in February is looming over our heads. That's 5,000 people, over 5,000 people per day will die in February because of this pandemic. Dr. Michael, can you say more about this pandemic, about COVID-19 and its effects on the African American community?
Well, I think that there's no question that this is a unique virus with a very infectious characteristic and ultimately a potential for a lot of what we call a morbidity and mortality. I think initially when the virus first entered the United States, that African Americans were the first to encounter the virus. When they talk about they talk about first responders. The first responders really were the African Americans who drove buses and worked in stores, cleaned up things in nursing homes. And when you superimpose that on a group of people who already have, because of a situation of inequity in healthcare, a group of chronic diseases, then that's a profile for disaster. And that's what's happened in the African American community. And so now here we are at the crest of this very, very serious problem with a vaccine that's available, and us with a history of what we call legitimate paranoia about the way we've been treated with these vaccines. It's going to be very difficult to convince our community that this may be, unfortunately, the only way out.
Bishop Flunder, would you talk more about the state of California and what you know to be happening regarding COVID-19, particularly in Oakland, in the Bay Area?
Well, we have a strong cultural disparity here in relationship to any kind of illness that suggests that we cannot be together. Let's just say probably the greatest problem for us who are Methodist is not being able to be in the company of one another in the worship experiences. And a lot of people are pushing back against not gathering together, pushing back against, being, fabulously churched and having to wear a mask, or pushing back against the frustrations of not being able to gather around things like Kwanzaa and Juneteenth and birthday parties and gatherings, and people are extending their pods over and over again. Like, you have your family and it's 8 or 9 of you, and you all know each other's everything, destination, how you're located, how you interact. And then 1 or 2 of you gets weary with that and goes out and engages in some way and doesn't tell the rest of the folks. And then they come on back, there's no quarantine, and they don't understand that basically the flimsy mask is more about you not passing it to somebody than somebody not passing it to you, if you understand what I'm saying. It gets in the circle and it's deep in it before anybody really realizes that it's there. And so that's going on and going on and going on. Then we have an enormous amount of people who are housing insecure now. And that housing insecurity, it causes folks to have to sleep inside cars and sleep inside, lean-tos and tents and stuff, and as many of them as can be, and to get out of the cold. And so if somebody is ill, not just with COVID, but with anything that's a communicable disease, then it really becomes very problematic. I'd also like to add, being food insecure really hurts the immune system in so many ways in terms of people's ability to push back and fight back against a lot of things. And so it's sort of like a concomitant number of things that's making the African-American community disproportionately affected. And then there's several things I'm sure we'll say about politics, but one of the political things I'd like to lift up is that we have had white evangelicals come to Oakland and try to talk our people into gathering again in churches and co-opt some of our pastors and talk to them about the importance of faith, that God is greater than any disease, and that we need to essentially trust God and go ahead and gather. And the consequence of just about every time something like this has happened is numerous people end up getting the virus who already have pre-existing conditions and disproportionately dying. And if you allow me to add on a very personal note, that now that the emergency rooms are so full, I've had people, one person of which passed away in the recent past, who basically were encouraged by ambulance drivers to try to remain in their houses because it was more dangerous for them to go to the emergency rooms, because the emergency rooms were so full that they were probably going to have to spend an hour and a half inside of the ambulance, and that they should wait, at home and then go to the doctor in the morning because our emergency rooms are overflowing. And so there are so many parts of it that have to do with the ways in which people of color and people of African descent in particular have been disproportionately affected. And there are things, everybody can't get on a helicopter and go to Walter Reed Hospital and get 15 different treatments so that they can come back and drive me crazy. Let's put it that way. That's not what everybody can do. And most of the bodies that can't do that are Black bodies and brown bodies.
Thank you, Bishop Flunder. Bishop Pearson, You've heard Bishop Flunder talk about disparities. She talked about healthcare, racial disparities, economic disparities, education, insurance, poverty, household income inequality, food insecurity, affordable housing, or the lack of safe and affordable housing. Tell me, in your eyes, about this pandemic and this pandemonium that we have on our hands.
Well, great conversation. It could go for hours and hours because we're dealing with, as I said from the beginning, both biological and psychological warfare in this country. This pandemic and the coronavirus itself is been said by the head of the state that it's a hoax. There are tens of millions of Americans who believe it is a hoax, and yet we of color who already believe the president is a hoax have to accept the fact that statistics say that we are more disproportionately affected by the disease. So as Dr. LeNoir mentioned, this is legitimate paranoia. Paranoia is a mental condition characterized by delusions of persecution. I'm guilty of that. Unwarranted jealousy or exaggerated self-importance. That sounds like the president. Typically elaborated into an organized system. It may be an aspect of chronic personality disorder or drug abuse or of some serious condition such as schizophrenia, in which the person loses touch with reality. All of us are somewhat victims of paranoia right now, and legitimate paranoia. We're confused. We are Black people and people of color, particularly in the West, and in America, even more particularity, we are very victim conscious. We are suspicious of everything. It's faith and science or faith in science. Science has failed us so many times, and many of us in studying failed science. Science means knowledge. So we're wrestling with a study that we were never successful at in general. You don't find a lot of Black or even ethnic sciences except for Koreans and, East Indians and things like that. And so we're really confused, and we're going to sort through it, but we have to think about it more directly than we ever have. And I always fall back on what I said earlier. We've got to go within so we don't end up going without. There is something intrinsically virtuous inside of every human being. And that's what we who are spiritual leaders try to encourage people to get in touch with. This may be the only revival, if there is one, that occurs out of this, because people are turning to prayer and meditation and spirituality, not religion, and because it hasn't worked for us. But we're really being pressed in to rethink what we believe and why we believe it, and how those beliefs, whether it's in the government, whether it's in God, whether it's in scripture, whether it's in science, whether it's in education, whether it's in artificial science, superficial science, or official science. And we don't know the difference between the three right now. So this is a time of deep introspection and deep abiding reflecting on who we are and what we believe about being human beings who are humane beings. It's a long discussion, a long conversation. I think, as I've said before, that the universe is correcting itself and redirecting itself, and all of this is going to end up with a better, elevated, and upgraded humanity.
Thank you, Bishop Pearson. That was good, both of you. Now, Dr. Michael, are you still with us? Dr. Michael has dropped out, but that's okay. We'll go on until he can get back in, because one of the statements that he made was that the vaccine was the only way out. And the people have questions about the vaccine being the only way out. So I want to make sure that we get to that, and we'll find out where he is in a few minutes. So Bishop Flunder, we're talking about this, the politics of race. We're talking about this pandemic and the pandemonium. He's back, and the pandemonium. And so, Dr. Michael, our question to you is, you said something about the vaccine being the only way out. And so I want you to say more, because we know that distribution has started the vaccine all over the country. Every place that I know of, people are receiving the vaccine. Not everybody's is receiving it, but a lot of people are receiving the vaccine. People are getting up on Facebook, taking pictures, saying they got the first shot. Other people are saying they got the second shot. Some people are giving commentary as to how they are feeling. Tell us about this vaccine and why the work you're doing is so important.
Well, before I say that, let me say this is one of the most rational conversations that I've had throughout the country around this pandemic. And I congratulate all of you. And I, as a physician, I assure you that you're in good hands with this particular program and this particular discussion. I say the vaccine because this is a very different pandemic. We've had vaccines before, and people were able to kind of get away with that because not getting them because so many other people were vaccinated. Now, with this particular pandemic, as we go along and vaccinate more people, you'll be less likely to get the infection. But once you get the infection and you're not vaccinated, your morbidity and your mortality goes up to exactly the same as the 5,000 people you anticipate. There will be no respite simply because you are in a group of people who are vaccinated. If one or two people have the virus and you get it, you have exactly the same pandemic. Now, that doesn't mean people should not make decisions about not to get the vaccine. I think people have the right to make their own decisions, and we should not patronize them, nor criticize them, nor refuse to treat them if they decide not to get the vaccine. But I, as a physician, I've already gotten my first shot, and the reason is because if, in fact, I don't get vaccinated, then my risk as someone over 70 is the same as those other 5,000 people who will die. I think, from my perspective, that's not the quality of life I want. But I can understand people's reticence, and maybe it's not so bad to wait a few weeks to make sure my skin doesn't fall off or I don't pass out somewhere. But I do think that at the end of the day, if you really want anything near the quality of life that you had before, I believe that being vaccinated is really the only way to protect you. Well, if you realize that smallpox vaccines have been around for over 50 years, but the last case of smallpox just disappeared this year. So this virus will be a constant companion to humans for the next 20, 25 years. And so consequently, until we reach a herd immunity of something like 60 to 70%, then you will not be protected simply because you're around some people who've gotten the vaccination. But here again, let me say this. If you choose not to get the vaccine, you should stand by your principles. And we as physicians, or the medical community, or the religious community, or even the communications community, should not criticize you. That means you've made a decision to take your health into your own hands, and that is really your right and even your obligation.
Dr. Michael, you are very respected throughout the world. I read your bio. I know that you were the president of the National Medical Association a couple of years back, and people know you everywhere. Let me just ask this question. We're talking about this vaccine, and as you said, people have the right to not be vaccinated. However, what about people that have pre-existing conditions? How does that look for them, for people that have diabetes, for people that have heart conditions, for people that have sarcoidosis, for people that have, lung issues? How does that work for them?
Every chronic condition impacts your ability to respond to infection. Certainly the conditions that you mentioned, diabetes, heart disease, or chronic renal disease. And we happen, because of a number of different dynamics, which would require a whole nother show and presentation, we have more of those diseases. Even if you're not spiritually connected, it affects your immune system. And so consequently, anytime your immune system is compromised, along with the other things that you have, you're at much greater risk. And so I think that in terms of vaccinations, I think what we'll find is that people with chronic conditions probably will benefit as much as other people because of the way vaccines work, stimulating your own ability to step up and protect yourself. So I think it's a question. It's a question. Most of the people who were studied in the studies did not have major chronic conditions. So I think we're going to have to keep an eye on that. And I think that's a very good point.
Yeah. He just said something that the vaccine enables the body to help itself heal. That's the most sober explanation of the vaccine I've heard. And that right there, that statement right there, makes the vaccine our friend rather than an enemy, because people have not heard, particularly from an African-American professional or scientist like Dr. LeNoir, to say it that way, because there's this paranoia out there, this fear that the white man's trying to kill us, it's genocide, you know, and
Right.
that is.
But, you know, I found African Americans a bit more reasonable than we're described. I think that they want to wait and see, take a careful look. Most people that I talk to say, well, I'm going to consider it, but I want to wait a few weeks. I think one of the other concerns is, and I'm sorry about my time being short, but one of the other concerns is that this vaccine was rushed. But this vaccine was really not rushed. They've been researching coronaviruses for the last 30 years and RNA viruses for the last 10 years. And so it's like a tree trunk. It's like a tree. All coronaviruses have the same trunk. They differ in the branches. So when they make a vaccine targeting the trunk. And they've been working on these vaccines for a number of years. So this is not a completely new vaccine.
Good.
In addition, it's been tested probably in over 60,000 people. But you're right, Bishop, that it hasn't been tested in children. It hasn't been tested in those people with serious chronic diseases. And so we're going to have to watch it. But this is really not a new vaccine. This is just a more sophisticated piece of this is a more sophisticated vaccine looking at the coronavirus. But the trunk of the tree has been studied for a very long time. And I think people can put that behind them.
Wow. Very helpful.
Can I add something about, just before you leave, where I see the merging of all the things that we have talked about as it relates to our people. For one thing, we don't have a good theology of self-care. And I think that those two things should not be separate from one another or fighting one another. I think they should marry one another. And part of our theology, particularly the theology that says that, honey, be not dismayed, God will take care of you, which of course for some people means you don't have to. Basically, you just trust in the Lord with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And eat 4 pieces of fried chicken. I mean, and I think that self-care, when we grant to ourselves the permission to take care of ourselves, that means ridding ourselves of bad theology, ridding ourselves sometimes from the company of people who are not really good for us, ridding ourselves from things that essentially create issues for our bodies, moving our bodies around better than we do and as best we can. There are several things we can say, but it begins with the theology that says I have a right to take care of myself.
Right. Well, we started the African American Wellness Project almost 20 years ago here in Oakland. And I started with a rage about the way African Americans were treated in the healthcare system. And so I got into communications and was a medical editor, CBS Radio, but I wanted to talk to African Americans because I think that we have to solve our problems from the bottom up, not from the top down. That you have to take care of you, exactly as you said, that you have to take charge of your own health. And you have to be an advocate for yourself and for your family in the healthcare system. One of the things that many of us don't realize is there's an unconscious bias toward African Americans in the healthcare system. White physicians often, without realizing it, look at us differently, treat us differently, talk to us differently. And what we at the African American Wellness Projects have said, no, that can't happen. You need to understand. You need to pick your primary care doctor carefully. You need to make sure that you get respected at every phase of the healthcare system. You need to ask questions. You need to be an advocate for people that are around you who don't have as much knowledge as you do. And I'll end with this final statement. I believe that if African Americans were as mad about healthcare that's poor in quality and unequal as they are when someone cuts in front of you in the Safeway line, we wouldn't have this problem. And so I'm sorry that I have to leave so soon, but I have to get back and make a few rounds with it. But thank you so much.
Wonderful, Doctor. Make sure, if you can, make sure somebody that you know will get us all of your information so we can disseminate it out to our thousands of listeners, because it's going to be very, very important.
Well, let me say to your listeners, you're in very good hands with this program and very good hands with these experts. and I appreciate you all.
Doctor, before you leave, I just want to make sure you promise to give us a part 2, because we're going to need to hear back from you.
All right, you call me anytime, and if I don't know, I know somebody.
Very good. Thank you so much.
We're chasing after you.
Yes.
We'll find you.
We need our own African American Nobel Peace Prize because he deserves it, sir.
Yeah, great job. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
I respect it. This just shows me, as I've always felt, how talented the Oakland community is, because I've done these interviews all across the country, and this is one of the most rational, lucid, informative group of people that I've dealt with in this perspective since I started. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you,
And
Doctor.
remember, health is your biggest asset. So protect.
Yes. Indeed.
That's a bumper. I like that.
That definitely is. Health is your biggest asset. Thank you, sir.
That's good.
There are 121 people on with us. We want to continue to say hello to Beyond the Gatekeepers audience, Facebook Live, YouTube. We want to thank you for being here. And we were just talking to Dr. Michael LeNoir. He was excellent. He gave us some good information. If you missed it, you can go back and watch the first 30 minutes of it. But we want to move on in our conversation, and we want to talk about, and as Bishop Flunder said, we want to tie in the current political atmosphere that's going on right now, and what we are experiencing as a Black community as a whole. I know that people have been traumatized. I know that people feel unsafe. I know that people are nervous. Just in having a community talk after my sermon on Sunday and listening to even some of the Black men talk about how they are afraid and they feel danger. And, you know, some people want to go out and buy guns and all of these different things. Bishop Flunder, say more, and Bishop Pearson, about the political climate, about the impeachment twice, and all of the things that our listeners need to hear on tonight.
Well, probably the thing that's on the top for me is that I don't think that there is anyone who really is not aware that a lot of what we have said is false, or what we have heard rather is false. I don't think that even people who support some of the words and statements that have suggested, for instance, that the election was fraudulent, I don't think that they deep down inside really believe that. And there are people who say that they really believe it. And what I have said back to them is that, honestly, I don't think that they really do, frankly. I think that they need to believe it. And there's a distinct difference between really, really believing it and needing to believe it, where essentially, if you want something to really be right, if I decide that you're going to hell in a handbasket, and I make up my mind about that, I can find some scripture for it. I can promise you. Once I make up my mind that you're substandard in some way to me, I can find some scripture or some writing, some writ in some way. But I come to the conclusion first. And the conclusion that most people came to that are in support of Donald Trump is that they want Donald Trump. And so anything that looks like it's going to take him from them or from the role of leadership that he has had in this nation, then that has to be wrong, and it has to be fought, and it has to be pushed back, because who cares if he's lying? If he's lying for a good reason, then lie on. You know, if you understand what I'm saying, does it make any difference? So in my heart of hearts, when someone needs to believe something in order for them to give self-worth and self-value to themselves, there is no truth that you can tell them that's going to change that. And I am not here saying in any way that I have an answer to that situation, because historically, the bloodletting that has happened around religion, whether we're talking about the Crusaders or we're talking about radical Muslims, or I'm talking about all the way back at Constantinople before it became Istanbul, you know what I mean? Byzantine times, you know, Byzantium. If we go all the way back, just about everything was sort of draped in religion. And people believed that God was on their side. But the truth is they wanted to conquer. If you want to conquer, and you say that God is with you because you feel it so furiously, inside, you determined that if I'm feeling this like I'm feeling this at the core of my being, certainly God is on my side. And so it goes back and forth. And I like lifting up Istanbul because it belonged to one group. And then it belonged to another. And then somebody else conquered it. And then somebody else conquered it. All of it in the name of the divine. I think the greater question for me, because we are as locked as they were locked in terms of anger and frustration, the greater question I have is that, will humankind ever grow out of this? Will there ever be a time that you have to die for me to live? Will there ever be a time that your faith or your beliefs have to be destroyed so that mine can be paramount? Will we ever become a human race? Will we ever move beyond having to have these almost animalistic power over dynamics in order to feel powerful and significant? And there's just one other thing. There's a breaking, particularly in large part because of the way this country was created to be what it is. Broken people came from other countries and immediately started breaking people. It happened like that. There always had to be somebody subordinate. And when you are a person of European descent and you've been told all your life that you're supposed to be in charge, it's God in God's intention that the role of certain people are to serve you, the Steve Bannon model, the upper class and the lower class. And he said the problem with us is that we have a middle class what ruined America, the upper class and the lower class. And you're supposed to be in the upper class. And now all of a sudden, Carlton Pearson got a bigger house than you do. And all of a sudden, Vanessa Brown can drive a car you can't drive. Or that's not supposed to. That's not the way it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to go like that. You shouldn't have something that I can't get.
Yeah,
that's not supposed to happen. And they were so glad when you shifted theologically some, Bishop Carlton Pearson. You know how happy there were people who were so happy that you did that. Not just because they believed like you. They were happy that you did it because they felt like it was going to bring you down. And it looked like we couldn't get you down. You wouldn't go down, because you were in with the in crowd. And there were people that were overwhelmingly jealous of you. And when you shifted theologically, and somebody said, oh, thank God, and they didn't say it out loud, but in their hearts, it's like, oh, thank God. Because that means you're going to hit the ground.
Yeah.
Which makes more room at the top for somebody else. When do we get enough good religion, which is the question that I have still, that we can stop doing this hatred and jealousy and power over dynamic and laying God on top of it to somehow sanctify it and justify it? And I know I'm talking too long, but I said one more thing, and that is that I have been, experienced a lot of bereavement in the recent past, and there are people. Can I just tell the truth, Bishop Yvette, that wouldn't talk to me, save their sanctified souls, because they just don't like me, for the different reasons that people don't like you. But when they found that I had incredible loss in my life, they started sending me things, and saying and telling, girl, you've been on my mind. I've been thinking about you. I'm praying for you. Wouldn't even talk to me. Do you understand what I'm saying? But I'm praying for you. And it dawned on me one day. I said, it's because they know that I'm likely broken. And I am vulnerable, perhaps, in this place where I am weakened or diminished by my loss. Do you understand what I'm saying? So now you've become my friend. You know, those are the people that say all sorts of rosy things about you at your funeral. Anybody know what I'm talking about? It's okay.
Yeah.
They didn't speak to you in real life. And I think that it is that part of it that is incredibly important for us to examine in this time. And I've talked too long, but that's what my heart is saying. Where do we learn enough? The cycle is the same over and over. Where do we learn enough to stop doing this? It doesn't have to be me or you. It can be me and you. And I need to stop putting God on my hatred to sanctify it. Something is very problematic about that. So.
Bishop Pearson, we're failing. Bishop just said it, Bishop Flunder, we're failing. We're not getting the lesson. Help us tonight. Well,
I've been studying astrotheology now for about 15 years. I am a pastor, so I like studying the stars. As the shepherds and the wise men saw a star, there's something in the heavens that's occurring as we speak that I think is upgrading the human race. The conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn on December 21st was the closest those two planets have been in 800 years. The only time they were that close before was 2,100 years ago. We think that's the star that the wise men or magi saw. I'm still looking into the stars and looking. My ministry was named Higher Dimensions, 1977 when I started it. There is a dimension and a domain and a measurement and an angle in an other ether reality that we're going to have to depend on or at least investigate. What we saw last Wednesday was white on white crime. We saw, and it made me think of Voltaire's comment made back in the 1700s, those you can persuade to believe in absurdity, you can convince to commit an atrocity. We saw the atrocious spirit, a lot of it motivated by faith-based mentalities. I saw a lot of Jesus saves signs, God hates fag signs, along with swastikas, and God loves America, and God hates niggas. I mean, I saw all that stuff. I saw Christians I know that I didn't know was in Washington there. Now, you hardly saw any people of color, except some of the police officers protecting the Capitol building. Our slaves built it. And so my emotions were very mixed, and I had to apologize because part of me was grieving and stunned by what I saw, and another part of me was almost rejoicing that I saw these white people fighting white people. If those had been blacks or coloreds or people of color or Muslims, they'd have shot us all down in seconds. But nobody came. So that showed a side of a world that we are not a part of. The only time the worst war fought in American history, where we had the greatest loss, was the Civil War. Over 600,000, almost 700,000 people killed that we know of. The number could have been 200,000 more. But that's more people killed than all the wars combined in the history of the nation, including the Revolutionary War. It's the war we fought with ourselves. America is at the point of a civil and non-civil war. It's occurring without civility. And there are people on the inside who were enabling that vitriol to not just the president. I'm concerned about the 70-some million people, because the president is gone and will be gone from that position. But those 70 million people who voted for him are still here. And they still have the same attitude, and I think they're hardened in their posture. Him being impeached the second time only further enraged them, because they've been they want a civil war. They would not mind if the president pulled out and they annexed all their states to become another country. You know, Jefferson Davis did this back in 1888, I think it was, with the Confederate States. And so we have to look at that. That's a hard look. That wasn't just racism. That's elitism. That's arrogance. That's ignorance. That's vice. That's violence. That's religion. Christianity is right in the middle of all that. Evangelical Christianity, you've heard me say repeatedly that they've gotten King James and King Jesus mixed up. We are the creatures that they're supposed to go into all the world and preach the gospel to. They think we're animals. So they feel very much justified in their anger. That is an issue that should not go undiscussed and unnoticed. We've got to talk about the racism within that religious mindset that onward Christian soldiers fighting.
Yeah, marching as to war.
Marching
with
as
the cross of Jesus going on before.
That's the campaign. That's the crusade. Cruz is the Latin word for cross. That's we killed thousands of Muslims in Jerusalem. The blood ran up to the ankles and knees of the horses. Killing for Jesus, killing for Christ. That's what a lot of those. That this is a serious issue. That's been now with the shifting of the tides and the stars and the energy on the planet and the melting of the glaciers. I think the glacier in people's heart is going to melt too. This may be the last ditch major gesture of demonstration. Those are demons you saw. That's a demonstration of rage and vitriol, and they didn't care who they hurt or who they hit or who they hated. They even hated white people who were sympathetic toward kindness toward others. We saw that in the name of whatever gods they were standing. Now that's a conversation that we need to continue to have because, again, we got to get the colonial imperialistic mentality out of America. And the only reason Donald Trump was raised, as I've said repeatedly, is to expose what ultimately needs to be expelled. He's being expelled. He's fired. We kicked him out of the White House. But we haven't kicked him out of the conversation because his people are going to intensify and metastasize around what has happened to him. And that needs to be addressed both legally, politically, and maybe militarily to protect the country.
That's good. Now, Bishop, you were just talking about you brought up that song and it brought up another song and all of these songs that we learned in church. Yeah. Like a mighty fortress is our God, a bulwark never failing. Everything about war, everything about, everything about war, everything about war. We are living in two Americas. We are living in a divided nation. And we saw on last Wednesday what happened. To push your point, Bishop Pearson and Bishop Flunder, the United States Pentagon will have 20,000 National Guard soldiers
in DC.
In DC. My nephew is one of them who has been activated today. And he said that some of his friends have been activated to other states in case of martial law. And I think that it is incumbent.
Remember that they're not there to protect us from the Iranians or the Russians or the Chinese or the Koreans. They're there to protect us from us.
That's correct.
From white America. And
that is correct.
Black folks would never shake their finger. I mean, you talk about white privilege. Those people that was the bastion, the epitome of white privilege, that we are tax-paying and many of them tithe-paying Christian Americans, and you don't tell us what the hell to do. Right. That was the spirit coming out of Washington. And the whole world saw it and needed to, because we are being dressed down. Pride goeth before destruction. We've lost our structure, a haughty or arrogant spirit before a fall. We have fallen and we're falling. Now we're going to be resurrected, but we actually saw the bitterness and the birthing of America last Wednesday.
Yep. And Bishop asked a question, Bishop Flunder, do you have good religion? Right? Because the religion that is in the center of this is toxic.
Yes.
The religion that's in the middle of this is not only toxic, but it's taking America into a tailspin.
Yes.
And it's unstoppable at this point. So I think there's got to be a breaking point. And so Bishop Flunder, say more about what the breaking point, as you see it, would be.
Well, I think the first thing, it comes from a good Pentecostal song, said, light turn on, can't hide. Somebody know God come out of that corner.
You can't hide.
You can't hide. You cannot manage.
Bishop, you got to say a little bit for the saints because they don't know what you're talking about.
They don't know that light turn on, can't hide. Light turn on, can't hide. Light turn on. God told me to come out of that corner. Oh yeah, that's
can't hide.
Now you know. Okay. Why? Why do we need to have this experience? Because we didn't know what was in the corners.
Mm.
And so,
sure.
Yes, we did not know. We didn't even know the real inner workings of the politics of our nation. We've learned more about the Electoral College in the last few weeks than we knew even existed. You know, we didn't know all about what's the certification. Nobody know what that is. We was too busy shouting for somebody who won that we want them to win, or crying for somebody who lost that we wanted to win. And so nobody was talking about the vice president going to certify. Nobody knew about the mahogany boxes.
Yeah.
Nobody knew anything about all of that. You understand? If we couldn't vote, we said, well, I'll catch them next year. This time we turned out in droves because our knowledge of this entire process it excelled essentially in ways where other things that were kept from us in history past, like having a great doctor on with us in conversation. I know the time that Black folks used to call themselves doctor because they thought they could never be one. You just say, how you doing, doc?
Yeah.
How you feeling, doc? It's like an honorific, because we didn't think we could achieve it. But now we are doctors. We are senators. We are politicians. We are educators. We are theologians. Things have shifted and changed such that what was once a mystery is now a reality. But you can't do it until you do it. So we had to see this happen to really know. And this has been an incredible learning curve. You can't fool us about some stuff. Never again. You can't fool us into thinking that we cannot walk up and down the street with an issue as Black Lives Matter and the police can stand back. Yes, they can.
Yeah.
Because we saw them do it. And they have to know that from this point on, let me tell you, Sugar, all I'm going to have to do is give you some videos of how you managed to do that at the Capitol just a few weeks ago. Things have shifted and changed, but it's a learning curve. Yeah. We had to know who we were and who we are. And then it goes back to our theology. And I want to say it again. I get in a lot of trouble by saying that the bloodletting in the Bible is not good for us. It just is not. There's no, and I want to say it like I have said it to the classes that I have taught. If you come up out of Canaan on purpose, following your son, and go to Egypt and raise up a nation in Egypt, and that Egypt nation is taken into slavery by the people who are the occupants of the land, and you are liberated by the great Moses and liberated out of Egypt with all sorts of signs and wonders and plagues. That in and of itself is problematic. But the thing that's really problematic is when you go back to Canaan, where you came from. And the first commandment of God is to kill everybody. You just kill.
Yeah.
And these people are your cousins. They have not done anything to you. You left. When you left, and then you come back with the sons of your sons of your sons of your sons, and you take over the land as though they have done something evil.
Mm-hmm.
What is the precedent that we are? What is the precedent? What did these people do? Say, well, they worship foreign gods. Well, you know, y'all did too, a whole lot of you when you were in Egypt. So you come back and you take the land. And when we preached from and taught from those sermons or those scriptures, we had an eye toward it being their right. And listen to the parallel. Yeah. It was their right to take that land, manifest destiny. God was on their side and it was their right. Yeah. But the people that they slaughtered, who were demonized, because you have to make the enemy a devil before you can take them out with righteousness, right? Mm-hmm. That same reality is biblical. Yeah. I wanted to not be there. But every time I realized that Egypt was Africa, it frustrates me when I go back to that text and understand why the bloodletting was good to do for Abraham's children. It was good for them to take down Egypt, get out of Egypt, go back to Canaan and take down everybody that was there that would not let only Jacob's seed rule. Something is wrong with that.
Because every text, not every text, but when you read the Old Testament, it talks about possessing the land. Yeah. And everywhere your foot shall tread.
Territorial.
Right? And, territorial, exactly right.
And kill everybody. And Saul got in trouble because he didn't kill everybody.
Right.
And all the sheep, not just all the people. It's just like,
we don't hear bleeding, yeah.
The prophet said, what's that I hear?
Yeah.
It says some sheep still alive. Mm-hmm. It cost him everything. What is that? And what is that? What is righteous bloodletting and unrighteous bloodletting? And who makes that determination? I'd say if it's a fight, the one with the guns, not the one with the knives. The one with the guns win because I can shoot you from across the room. The one with the knives, I got to get right up on you. I'm going to take you out. What does that mean? The one who is the most prepared, the one who has the most money, the one who has the most power, the one who has the most control. That doesn't mean it's God. It just means you have the guns.
That's right.
And we have the knives. It doesn't mean it's just. It doesn't mean that it is right. Something has to change about that mentality. Something is wrong, and the United States needed a lesson. And I want to say to you, my beloved, we got ourselves an object lesson. Just a few days ago, the enemy among us is my neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
The enemy, not from Iran, not from North Korea, not from all these other places where we've been killing other folks because we are concerned with right here in this nation. The enemy wants to see me destroyed and you destroyed and people like us destroyed because they are devoid of the power that they believe is their God-given right.
I need to read to you all something that came. It's called The Word for the Day, and actually it's Piloting Faith by Reverend Cameron Trimble. And it says, yearning for a new way will not produce it. Only ending the old way can do that. You cannot hold on to the old, all the while declaring that you want something new. Mm. The old will defy the new. The old will deny the new. The old will decry the new. There is only one way to bring in the new. You must make room from it. That's by Neil Donald Walsh. And she says, everything is breaking. Insurrection and breaking our sense of national identity. White racism is breaking Black lives. National leaders are breaking our laws and institutions. Our economic policy is disproportionately breaking the poor. Our fear of each other is breaking our communities. Our denial of reality is breaking our hope for a better world. Everything is breaking. As scary as it is, let it break. Let it break our bigotry. Let it break our hate. Let it break our fear. Let it break our privilege. Let it break our aggression. Let it break our silence. Let it break our delusions. Let it break our failed national leaders. Let it break our systems that oppress. Let it all break. When we give up the hope of fixing our systems, we free ourselves to create new ones. Yes, everything is breaking. Let it break. A better world is possible when we let go of this one. We are in this together. Amen, Ashe, and so it is.
Oh my God, Shante, send that to me.
I will.
Oh my God. Nothing else to say. Amazing. Who was that again?
Reverend Cameron Trimble. Bishop knows her too.
She's a white sister, emerging from the Methodist experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, but power.
What a word. Well, we're seeing demolition. There's going to be a new building, but we have to tolerate the dust of the demolition. The old is collapsing. The old wave is coming out. The new wave is coming in. The new waters are coming in. And there's a clash and crash that has to happen. And when the dust settles or the suds finally fizz away, we will have a new beach and a new landing. And it'll be good. But this has to happen now as we upgrade the human spirit and become less vicious. We're going out of Pisces, where the tails of the fish are pulling in opposite directions. That's the Piscean age in which Jesus, we think, was born. I know I was born in that age. And to move into the age of Aquarius, which is an air and wind sign, but aqua, water, and we're water. We're becoming less linear and more wavy and more palatable and more dissolvable, and we can move. Truth is not static or stagnant. It moves and shifts and changes. What may be true today, fact today, may be not factual tomorrow. So we have to dance with the truth and realize that it keeps unveiling and disrobing. We're coming to a new kind of nudity, a new kind of vulnerability or of exposure. And who told you were naked? And Adam and Eve were naked and not ashamed. So with this nudity, we're going to lose some shame and be exposed and not use leaves to cover up our nudity.
Good.
Jesus is still cursing fig trees because they're false advertisement, lush and green, and when you get in there, it ain't no fruit there. So we're going to go through that whole kind of experience and enjoy being free to be who we are without apology. Can you imagine the shameless, guiltless consciousness? That's what I think we're going to as we replace religion with a relationship vertically and horizontally with God and with each other. It'll be powerful.
That's good. I want to give the people an opportunity on Facebook Live. I want to thank the 145 people that are on with us right now, as well as on YouTube. And I want to give them an opportunity to ask us some questions, because I know that people have questions as it relates to what's the current events, what's happening. We know that the president was impeached twice. On tonight was the second time. And we know that people are afraid. We know that there are threats. But I'm in agreement with Reverend Cameron Tribble. Let it break.
Yeah,
Break. We've got to let it happen. We got to let it happen so that something can be born anew. And so we're right in the middle of a birthing. Yes, sir.
Bishop, like you said the number 150, whatever. These messages are so important. When we get through, on my sites, several thousand people watch them.
That's true. Yeah.
I don't want anybody to think that the numbers are that small, because thousands of people are tuning, and then they're sharing it and sharing it. So this message is important, impacting, and it's getting out to the world. So thousands really are listening, and as tomorrow more will hear it. And this may be one of the most important shows we've done, presentations we've done, and the numbers are going to continue to increase. So I want our audience, please share this with your friends. Just share it over and over again, and then discuss it. And do send the questions that the bishop-elect is about to read to us now.
Yes. All right. We're waiting for some questions to come through. I know that people have it, but in the meantime, Senator Pat Spearman is always with us, and we thank God that she's doing much better, and God is healing her body. And so she made a couple of statements to us tonight. She said, imagine where we would be if we had not mobilized to get folks to the polls. And she is absolutely right. We thank God that we got so many people to go out and vote. She also said the politics of policies taking down racism still have to be taken down. 2022 will be important to continue to strengthen our democracy. She says we have a seat at the table, so now let's expand the table and do what we need to do. And she beckons us to pay attention to state legislators. GOP-controlled state houses will bring more voter suppression laws. Of course, we know that's coming. And so, of course, we have to be vigilant in the lower courts. We have to be vigilant in the state, and we have to be vigilant in our local legislation so that we can understand what is happening in our world.
There's a little something I think about as a woman raised by Black women and Black cooks, in the kitchen. It's called a workaround. That I remember one day I told my grandmother, I said, I don't have any food. It's because I was kind of new to living alone, She said, you got some flour? I said, yes. I said, you got some oil? Yes. You got some salt? Yes. You got some baking soda? So your baking powder? Yes. Oh, girl. You got some food. Come on now. But I didn't know the whole concept of workaround. If you understand that essentially when things show up a certain way, when people in Georgia tried to suppress the vote and keep people from getting their ballots, or take down the places where they could vote in certain neighborhoods where they're accustomed to voting and historically had voted. The folks had to find a workaround. To work around the stoppage, if you understand what I'm saying, to come up with some kind of way. So then they started picking people up in church vans and in cars and taking them and say, well, we don't have, that place is not open, but we can fill up the church van and we can go around over here. We can still figure out. So it was feeling powerful enough to pool our skills and resources to find ourselves a workaround, so that every block that's put in our way, we can find a way around it. There's another way. We come from workaround people. We come from people who know how to do what we used to say, make a way out of no way.
Yeah.
There's a way around if we can put our minds together and our thoughts together and go around every stumbling block and every middle wall, as the folks used to say. We can find a way to do that if we have confidence in our ability. Stacey Abrams never did brag. She didn't need to. What she did was she mobilized her and the unnamed women. It's about 4 or 5 more of them whose names should be called along with hers. But they worked and they worked and they worked. And when there was a block, you get a workaround and you work out a way, because you got everything you need. You got some flour.
You got it.
You got some oil. Come on, you're a cook. He's a much better cook than me. Trust me.
Yeah.
That Pearson can cook. But you understand exactly what it is that I'm saying. That's it. Yeah.
We got 2 questions on the floor. Thank you, Bishop Flunder, for that. We have 2 questions on the floor. One from Ramon Perry. What needs to happen for America to have the talk about race on a national scale? So I think we got to have the break-in first before we can have the talk.
Well, we're actually having the talk. It's just an argument right now. It's loud. It's violent.
Yeah, that's good.
But the conversation is going on. And at every table, in every bar, in every barbershop, in every salon, they're talking about it. They're whispering about it. Some are shouting about it. But the whole world is talking about it. We're being forced to confront and or combat certain issues that have hindered and stagnated the growth of the human race. The species itself, like a snake, outgrows its skin and sheds it. We have outgrown this century and this particular last wave of 2,000 years. We're shedding it. It looks violent. I say we're in the narrowest part of the birth canal when the pregnancy or the birthing is most painful and noisy and traumatic, even to the birthing infant, because they've been in that water for 9 months and now they're sliding down the birth canal and they hear the groans and the shouts and a few cuss words, and then they pop it on a table. There's a bright light shining, and they've heard somebody say, breathe, stop, and hollering, and they're not used to that. And so we're all still suffering from PTSD just from being born in the natural. Well, we're birthing something. Natural death is quiet. You just go to sleep and die, unless it's some kind of violent thing. But birthing is naturally loud, naturally messy, naturally noisy. So we're hearing a lot of noise. But on the other side of the noise, where we get the word nausea, on the other side of the noise and the nausea is a sound.
Yes, sir.
Listen for, and then listen to the sound. And that Greek word is ekos, English word is echo, and an echo is a sound out of the past. There's something that's been coming this way for a long time, and we're now hearing it. Sound only travels 1,100 feet, while light travels 180,000 miles per second, something like that. So we're dealing with a sound in the earth, and all of creation is groaning, waiting for the manifestation of the enlightened ones. The people who are awakened, and they're looking around and they're saying, oh, the old is passing goodbye, but the old and the new are passing each other. It's like somebody dying and a baby being born, and they're passing each other in the ether. And so we're a little bit confused. Ride it out, folks. Walk it out. Work it out. Go and grow with the flow, especially when it becomes a flood, which it is right now. We're at flood stages.
Mm-hmm.
This is a tsunami.
Yes.
And there's a cleansing and a curing and a clearing and a correcting and a purging and a redirecting that's occurring right now. We're pregnant with destiny. And we're birthing. Wow.
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can't take all the questions now. They're flooding in, right? But here is 2 that I know that we should take. One says, why has the Black church, especially the mega Black church, has been so silent in the midst of January 6th and the last 4 years of this presidency?
They're busy protecting their brand. These and their breeds. They don't want to rock the boat. They're trying to. They feel threatened already because their churches are empty, mega or no. And so preachers are very, very frightened right now. I hear from them every day, dozens of them. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to think. They're splitting. They're changing. They're charging. So they can't even think about anything but survival. They're in a survival, not revival. They're in a survival mode right now.
That's good. Bishop?
Yeah, I think that that all of what we stood by and believed in powerful ways has now been challenged.
Yeah.
And I'll say it, I think it is happening in the Black church, in churches of color, just like in some ways happening in the white churches. People really thought they could instruct God to make Trump win. That you could direct God,
right,
make him win. And if you kept saying it enough times, it would just happen, right? And I think that is not just true of the white evangelicals that were carrying it on. I think that some of the things that churches that we are more familiar with thought that they could instruct God about to make happen because it was what they wanted to make happen. And there were only a few ways in which they were really making big money. When the coronavirus came, which has been the greatest enemy to churches of color in so many ways, in terms of how we structure our worship, because it's effervescent.
Yeah,
that's the word. Effervescent. It is a whole lot of things that come out your mouth and all like that, and a whole lot of hopping and jumping in drums and stuff, and so in choirs. That's a choir. The choir is the great enemy as COVID-19. So those are the things that drew people. And folks were not really clear about what do we put in its place. And so they fought to continue in that way. So that was our haka paka taka laka, if you understand what I'm saying. We want to be able to keep having church like we've been having church. And so, here comes the wind of the Spirit of God that changes the whole dynamic. Now we all need to get somewhere and really tell the truth. Have we got good religion?
Yeah.
Have we had it even for a long time?
Yeah.
Now we have good performance art, but the question that I have is, if good religion undefiled is to care for the widows and orphans and to stay unspotted from the systems of the world, the question is, have we got good religion? And maybe that is why God is making our churches diminish.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't think it's an accident. I think it's a part of the whole reset.
Mm-hmm.
Where is Jesus? Let's remember this brown-skinned Palestinian.
Yeah.
Let's remember that church was not anything like the powerful entertainment reality that it is now. Not anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not forget the intimacy is lost in many of those environments. Something has got to shift and change. And this right here, if you got a 3, 4, $5, $10 million campus, we call them now, a $10 million campus, a $20 million campus.
You're in trouble.
And all of a sudden,
you're about to be broke.
You got a problem.
There's a break-in for sure.
Because the bank needs their money.
Mm-hmm.
And you got a note to pay.
Yeah.
And then you got a house and all of that. And then all of that. And they know how to come for you because you're the principal. And those are the things that people are terrified of. But I think it's a honing down and a way for us to find out really what is good religion. Mm-hmm. And what the heck have we been doing? What is this thing? What is this thing that we've been doing if it wasn't able to touch the hearts of people enough to keep what just happened from happening? How can you attend our churches and then go to Washington, D.C. and crack the sternum on a police officer stuck in a door from the mouth? and crying out for his life. And you got a Bible, you holding a Bible in your hand. How does that work?
And they dragged the black woman who was a security guard,
Absolutely.
who was just trying to protect herself from being hurt. And a white woman reached out. She snatched up, tried to take her phone. A bunch of white men jumped on her, dragged her on the ground. I mean, they were beating her up. It's a video out.
Yes.
Do you know
I
her job put her on leave, and somebody put a GoFundMe up for her because she was placed on leave without pay, and they have raised $100,000 for her so far.
Wow. Notice that scripture says pure religion and undefiled.
And undefiled.
We have a lot of pure religion.
Come on, Bishop.
It's sullied. It's spoiled. It's marred. We've got to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
We've learned the craft of ministry, but we've also mastered the crap in ministry and ministers, and that's coming to exposure right now. We are having to deal with that, which is so, as you alluded to earlier, Dr. Brown, that it's toxic. Religion is toxic. It's full of poison. It's defiled. And so it's going to now be reviewed, revised, and some of it revolted. It's some of these churches and these denominations and these conferences and all will never, ever be what they were. Mm-hmm. Because they were a 20th century, many of them were apostolic and prophetically ordained, but they don't fit in the 21st century. Pentecost is not just about speaking in tongues, it's about understanding. Finally, they were astounded, not because they heard tongues, but because it's like, wow, I don't remember when I ever understood this mess before. It's starting to make sense to me. So when it starts to make sense, we see that which is funky and foul and spoiled and rot. The country is full, especially in the area where I live, of rotted mindsets, sloppy agape. It's nasty. And
come on.
It's good religion, you know,
yeah.
It's sloppy. And so and they're eating slop. These people are bold. These preachers got on their pulpit Sunday and began to rebuke Democrats and rebuke progressives and rebuke Trump enemies and ask God. Well, I heard one preacher out of Kentucky literally ask God to curse and kill everybody that voted against Trump.
That's so terrible.
Yeah, it's not
nothing to do with God or goodness.
No, we can't tolerate that anymore. We can't excuse it. We have to refuse it.
Call it out.
Call it out is right. Here is his next question. Does the panel feel the terrorism riot in the Capitol, because that's what it was, last week is a result of the paradigm created by Barack Obama's presidency? Was his blackness, coloredness alone so very upsetting despite his centrist nature? This is by Bayard. The last question that we had was by Dr. Rochelle Carr. This is by Bayard Rustin, LGBT Coalition.
Wow. Absolutely.
It was the second term that did it. Because the first term, what he was supposed to be is a statement that we are beyond racism in our nation. He was essentially, because he had to be the cleanest, he had to be squeaky. You know, he couldn't have, 3 wives and 3 sets of kids, and he couldn't have, grab women by the genitalia and all that. He couldn't have any of that, So he had to be squeaky clean. And they questioned his birthright, and they questioned his citizenship and all that. But he was so squeaky until we don't hardly have anybody in the history of presidency that was squeaky as he was. But it also was to demonstrate that we are not racist because we have our first black. Now, mind you, Barack Obama is a very good friend of mine, President Obama. But at the same time, he was as much white as he was black.
Sure.
But they never called him sort of black or half a black. Because if any black is in it, is black. I mean, that's the first part. The second, and so the second part of this is that he was supposed to be a one-term wonder. It was supposed to be something that we did, and then we would never do it again. And when he won the second time, the Republicans started planning.
And panicking.
Yep, both.
They were intent that this will never happen again. And I think that Trump is because of Barack. Trump is.
You're right.
Intention
You're
was
right.
the total antithesis of Barack Obama. A strong,
Indeed.
virile,
Indeed.
masculine, heavy-handed, cussing, fighting, carrying on white man to get this thing set right again. And I think that's what made Trump work. He blew everybody out, talked about the daddies, that's why I still don't understand Ted Cruz. Talked about the wives, talked about this cussing and raising hell and all that. Somebody said, that's my kind of man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Bullying, crass.
They loved it. But it was Barack, because Barack, in so many ways, was not supposed to do it 2 years. That wasn't 2 terms, rather. That was not supposed to happen.
Right.
That was not the plan.
And still one of the most popular presidents in recent history and in American history to this day.
Yep. Says, what about the move to build Black communities? Here in Durham, we are building Brightwood. We are being prepared for the stones that will be tossed. Is this a viable move? I want to just say yes. They had in Tulsa, they built a community, Greenwood.
That's right.
It's not different. It's just that white people got mad and burned it down.
Well, there's a new Black Wall Street spirit that's in it. Remember, I live in the town where this year we celebrate 100 years of the mob mentality that tore 36 to 40 blocks and burned them to the ground and killed hundreds of people. They're still discovering mass graves as we speak.
Yeah.
That same energy I saw in DC last week.
Yes.
That's what I kept thinking about when I saw those people rush. That was the clearest example in spirit of what happened here 100 years ago. It was startling because it's still strong and long. Now, they kept this one quiet for almost 100 years. The whole world saw that one. There's no way to hide it. And thing about roaches and stuff is they don't come out till you bring your girlfriend over to the house. Or they come out at night. You bring your friends over, go, here come them roaches with tennis shoes and on and stuff. Coming out from under everything.
They say, who is that? Right.
And they got tamarines too and Bibles. And so we have to restructure what is being unveiled and revealed so we can see. There is a new Black Wall Street being built just outside of Atlanta. I know the owner, the same man that owns the mansion that you see on Greenleaf, Mr. Allen, he owns 600 acres and he's built another Black Wall Street. That spirit has been unleashed in the earth, and Black and ethnics are going to start expounding cathedrally. We're going to blow up and become bright. One of the things I said to my nieces and nephews today, watch the television. We're watching the news. I said, look how many very articulate, intelligent Black news commentators are all over the news, looking at this and being I love Don Lemon. I watch him almost every night, and Chris Como. Those are two of my favorites. They just are in your face with this stuff. Mm-hmm. That Black people have a voice and can make commentary and are influencing the culture. That also should not be ignored, and that's going to be enhanced more. It looks better in the midst of the bitterness. It's very powerful.
It's good. And Bishop Bishop-elect Sonia Williams says, how do we attack the evils of America when it's so deeply steeped in religion? And do you believe the Civil War will eventually be fought on the church steps of America?
I want to say Bishop-elect Sonia Williams. First of all, I'm glad she asked that question because she's right in the belly of the beast. She's right in Atlanta and knows something seriously about what it took to work with the coalitions that got the vote out. And I want to congratulate you and congratulate your congregation for the work and the ways in which we saw you online feeding the people at the polls and all that. That's the way we get it done.
That's good.
And how do we effectively change this essentially in America? What is it that we do that keeps us from having yet another backlash?
Mm-hmm.
Because somebody somewhere is still mad. And I'm almost of the opinion that we need to start working hard with our young people. Because there's a generation when I watched them in the Black Lives Matter marches. And this was the first Black Lives Matter march that I have ever seen, where there was almost an equal amount of non-Black
to
Black people in just about every march. And in some marches, there were more white young people or more white people than it was people of color. Who took the same mace, the same, rubber bullets, the same
shoving
down, right? They same getting arrested, the same, all of the same things. They put themselves sometimes in between people and the police. And it reminded me, the closest thing to it was some of those young people that came down from the north to the south during Martin Luther King's time and walked those marches with Black people. There are generations coming who knew not Joseph. If you understand what I'm saying. The bishop said, I think earlier on, there are generations coming that knew not Moses. There are generations coming that knew not Trump. There are generations coming, and they are educated, they are prepared, and they don't have the same indoctrination of racism, and they are rebellious. The one person I want to lift up is Kellyanne Conway's daughter.
Yes, God.
That's who.
Oh, her mama the business publicly.
She got her mama to come home.
Yeah.
You hear what I'm saying? Her father and her mother own two different, they're both Republicans, but they don't agree with one another at all. And the daughter, she's the one that has the online presence. And she talks about the toxicity of the Trump administration out loud. And her mama knows it. Wow. And they haven't put out in the street, they're still feeding her. I mean, it's amazing to me. But what that suggests, it suggests that these young people have both the fire and the understanding and the intelligence and the ability. I think our job is to mentor them.
Yes.
But to also respect them. See, we got to do something about this thing where young people think older people are not needed. But you need the vision of the people who have seen what you haven't seen. And then old people think young people don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
The truth is that they are foot soldiers and they are more educated in the things today. If you need somebody to help you with your technology,
they're kids.
Don't go to the people older than you. Go to the ones younger, because they know it like they know their own name.
Yep.
There is my hope.
Yep.
There is my hope. My hope, yes, is in my children. My children are in their 40s. You know what I'm saying? But my real hope is in my grandchildren.
Yeah.
The ones that are 10 and 16. Those are the ones who I am, because they are completely different.
Yes.
And
good point, Bishop Flunder.
I tell you this, my little boy, my grandson, I was talking to him about the grace of God. You remember that, Nessa?
Yes.
Talking to him about the grace of God, right? And singing grace songs. I was having a Pentecostal grace song moment all by myself, singing grace, God's grace that is greater than all my sin. And I was just having a time. And the boy said, Grandma, what is grace? I said, honey, that's the way God loves us. God just loves us, no matter who we are, no matter what we've done. The love of God. God loves us and loves us to life. He said, yeah, he said, that is God. That is he said, that's exactly what she does. He said, she's loving us to life.
Yeah.
Wow.
I had to run out the room. I mean, it was like, so where did that theology come from? Where did he hear that? How did he put that together?
Mm-hmm.
How did he give God breasts?
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand what I'm saying? And it wasn't because I spent time indoctrinating him about God and gender, if you understand. But somehow in his mind, that was what he saw and understood about God. And I said, this generation right here, when they come up, My hope is that what we will have done is given them enough of our quality time,
Yes.
help them to make the world different.
And to your point, Bishop Flunder, just really quickly, before Bishop Pearson says the last thing about young people, the black woman that was beat up in the street by all of the white people and slapped by the white woman, her daughter saw the video because the mother's location on her Facebook had been turned off and on her phone for 2 days. She didn't know where her mother was. And something said, my mother must have went to the Capitol. Now, her mother threw her out because she marched with the Black Lives Matter. She's 18 and she's a lesbian. And her mother threw her out because she marched with Black Lives Matter. And so she thought about it, and then she looked and she saw the video, and she says, Mom, she took a picture, snapshot, said, Mom, is this you slapping this black woman? Put it all on Instagram and everywhere. She turned her mother in. She turned her uncle in and another relative. It was 3 of them together, and she turned them all in, gave their names first and last, and then she put up a picture of her and her mother, said, just in case you don't believe that's my mother, here we are together. So people are not going for it. They are tired of the foolishness. They don't think the way their parents think. They don't feel the way their parents think. And we're going to do more and more and more of that. They are removing themselves from.
Yes.
Exactly.
I trust them.
Yep.
I choose to trust them. While I teach them, I trust them.
And we learn to listen to them. I even listen to the foul language in some of the raps because their anger is important for us to notice. And anger is a signal emotion. It signals an emotion, a commotion, or even a devotion in that person's life that is being processed. And so we need to hear the anger of our young people. And here's what I tell them about grace. That doesn't just mean God loves you. I say God likes you.
Yeah.
We've always been taught that God loves us, but we do not believe that God doesn't like us, and we don't like ourselves.
That's right.
As a man that has been in holiness all his life, I have never felt liked by God. The thought never even crossed my mind.
See,
I don't feel liked by my parents. I don't even like me myself because that's the way I was trained to think. So when somebody says, I love you, that same person, nobody can hurt you or harm you or hate you like somebody who loves you or who you love. And so we've got to teach this generation, we like you, precious. We say, well, I love you, but I don't like your hair and I don't like your lifestyle. And I don't even say that anymore. I just listen, I love you and I like you. My dad used to say, I love you, I love you, I love you, and I like you too. And my dad for years. I didn't say it, he said it, but now I get it differently. I like people in a different way, and I like me, starting with me, in a way with all the negative things I've heard said about me. When I'm around, let me just close with this. When I'm around outed gay people, since we talked about the same gender loving, an outed gay people has risked him or herself to terrible dislike and disdain and vitriol and almost hatred. It is a very courageous and sometimes stupid thing for somebody to say they're gay openly because they're going to be attacked. But the people who do it are courageous. They're not just angry, they're bold. They have some kind of drive in their spirit that gives them the capacity to run the risk of being exposed and expelled by their own family members. That group I love in a way I don't love and like any other group on the planet. And so I think that the culture is beginning to see some of the most bold and trustworthy and reliable and integrous people on the planet are same gender loving, out people who came out on their own and said, listen, here I am. Here, what Martin Luther said, here I stand. Y'all can kill me. You do, and they have killed many. But that's shifting. This is a powerful moment to be who you are without apology.
That's it.
And affirm yourself. The self-affirmation.
Yes.
Which it's a mutual admiration society, which I learned a lot from Bishop Pearson. You have to be in love and in like with yourself too.
Good.
And that is a completely anti-Christian concept for the most part.
Oh, yeah.
I hate my flesh. I'm trying to beat it under subjection. Say, no, I ain't trying to beat mine. I'm trying to get to know it. Let's get to know each other. Since we got to live in the same body, my consciousness and my flesh have to live together. Let's see, and then I find that I have the strength, I want to say it this way, to say to people, and there are people that would possibly really disagree with me, but I will say this. Somebody said to me, old-time friend of mine, said, I just want to let you know, Yvette, I love you so much, but, I just can't, support your lifestyle.
Again?
And I stopped for a minute. And I've shared this with you, I'm sure, Nessa. And I stopped for a minute and I said, well, first of all, if you're talking about the fact that I'm a same gender loving woman, it's not a lifestyle. It's like race. It's a reality. It's who I am. It's not what I do. I am who I am if I'm not doing anything. So this is the conversation that I had with this person. I said, but the other thing is that what that's an insult to is my relationship with my partner, with my spouse, almost 40 years relationship with my spouse. So that somehow suggests that my relationship should be diminished to a lifestyle. I said, so let me clear you up. And they said, they said, well, I love you and you're my friend and my sister. I said, so let's be clear. The probability is I'm not going to really be able to be your friend and your sister. And they said, what? I said, because what you can't do is you can't diminish and make essentially tawdry and vile my relationship. If I let you do that, just so that I can have you close to me, right? Then what I've done is compromised what are my beliefs, essentially, and what I honor and what I respect. Another way for me to say it is that I'm an African American. If it aggravates you because I lift up or support African American realities, you want me to make my life such that I am even in terms of how I support African American realities or how I support non-African American realities. When I'm trying to lift African American people up, what I need you to do is to be okay with that.
That's right.
Because that's a part of who I am.
Yeah.
And we can't really hang out together if you cannot respect my partner. How are we gonna hang out? Where are we gonna go when you have essentially drawn a line and said that I need to tell you that? And so here's what I realized. What I realized is that people have often heard from other people that said, well, I know Bishop Pearson, or I know Bishop Flunder, I know so-and-so, or I know. Do you understand what I mean? Yeah. And since you know them, if you really want to please God, you may be able to stay their friend, their confidant, but you need to check them on their stuff to make sure they don't think that you support what it is that they do. So it's a conditional love, the conditional love that says that you have to agree with me or I will insult, and understand what I'm trying to say. I will insult who you are. Mm-hmm. It's an interesting dynamic. If you are a kind colored man, and an obedient colored man, and a self-diminishing colored man, you can have a lot of white friends. But if you are not willing to be a self-diminishing person, submissive, and you are proud of who you are, and you talk about your ancestry, then you find that you're getting on people's nerves. Yeah. And they don't really want to be around you. Right? Us getting over that, and I can't say it any more clearly, getting over that where you are able to celebrate yourself and require other people to respect. You don't have to agree, but you must.
That's it.
Respect who it is that I am and who it is that I love. You must, or what you can't do is really keep company with me. You're not going to come up alongside me and be tight. If you understand.
We're not going to be tight.
No, we're not going to be tight. I'm not going to nail your foot to the floor, but we're not going to be tight. It's just not going to. Where is the self-affirmation?
Yes.
For those of us who were taught suffering religion that must suffer, and you must diminish yourself, and you must, hide yourself, and you must, take back and destroy your quintessential essence.
Yes.
In order to get along with other people. Mm. The reason Carlton Pearson is my friend and my brother is because I have not asked him to give up his quintessential essence.
It's good.
He has not asked me to give up my quintessential essence. His experience is not mine.
That's right.
My experience is not his.
Right.
He been places and he been doing some things I ain't did. And then I've been some places that did some things he ain't did. Okay. But that what I love is the fact that as different as our life paths have been in some areas, the essence of who he is respected by me. Now that's a hard pill to swallow for religious people because we have this business of right and wrong.
Right. And they need you to be at war and in conflict.
Do you see?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And friendships are conditioned by whether or not you're clear that I'm not in support of you, you know. It's like, you know, and you have to find that line and be able to say back, well, I'm not in support of the fact that you're not in support. And I don't know that we're going to be able to be tight. I can be nice, but I don't know if we're going to be able to be thick.
And we need to get away from some of these disclaimers. A lot of people say, you know, I love Bishop Pearson. Now, I don't agree. When they say, well, go ahead and have him. Now, I don't agree with this doctrine, but I love him. Well, they often say, I don't agree with this doctrine. Why do you have to say that?
Right. Just say, I love him.
Just say, I love you.
And let the rest go.
Yeah. When I've done many programs where they say, God loves you, but God loves everybody, but God loves you, but no, God loves your butt, period.
That's it.
You know, that's what I said that one time on Stevie Wonder's station down in LA. It was a huge audience. They were just beating up on Bishop when I first started preaching this, and the lines almost went dead. It startled everybody. It's like, no, God love your nasty butt. So shut up. You know, we don't. It's an unconditional love, and when we love ourselves unconditionally and like ourselves with honor, it's easy for us to do the same for other people. And this whole religious doctrine of Pharisee, and the word Pharisee, both in Greek and Hebrew, means separatist. The Jesus I know was an inclusionist, or the Jesus I portray was and I am an inclusionist, a radical inclusionist. And I despise Pharisaic mentalities. I have some Pharisaic friends, but we ain't tight.
Right.
Like you said, we can't be tight.
That's it. And I think this is good. I think this pandemic, what we're going through right now, it's cutting away some of those fake people, some of those people that we can't be tight with. It's all good because the pandemic means we can't be tight, but you know how. You can't come visit me. I can't come meet you. We don't have to go to lunch. We don't have to go to dinner. None of that. We don't have to do anything. I think it's a blessing in disguise. I want to say to both Bishop Flunder, whom I call Mama, and Bishop Pearson, whom I call Uncle Bishop, that you have been a blessing in this pandemic, in this pandemonium, and in the midst of this panic. And people love you, the world loves you, and the world needs you. I love you both so much. Thank you for being with me tonight.
It's been a great night. Love you. I love you. Take care, sir. All right.
We adore you. Thanks for including us. Peace and love.
I'm gonna get something up to you for you to make me some groceries before very long. Let's go. It won't be long.
Just rest. I'm gonna go get my little Daniel's fast grape and go to bed.
Before we let the people go, so Bishop Pearson is doing the Daniel fast, and he has affirmations that he posts every morning. And they are wonderful affirmations. And you can go back and look at them, and they are daily. He does them every day. Go to his page, Bishop Carlton Pearson. He does those affirmations. Look for Bishop Flunder on Facebook and Instagram. Both of them are there. And you can find out, you know, if you want to know more about their ministries and what's going on, what they're doing, you can follow them as well. Thank you all for joining us tonight on Beyond the Gatekeepers. We have a few announcements for you. We are so glad to present to you the Healing Apothecary. This is the daughter of our presiding bishop, Nubian Flunder. She is the founder. And you can go to her website at The Healing Place, thpapothecary.com. That's The Healing Place, thpapothecary.com. Please support my sister. All right. Free Entrepreneur Workshop, February 3rd through April 28th. Done by the instructor is Vaughn Williams. It's presented by Harlem Pride. You can apply now. The deadline is January 15th at 5 p.m. Go to the Harlem Pride website. You can work on real projects and learn mission, vision development, business structure, business management, business finance and planning, and marketing and promotion. And if you want more information, send an email to info@harlempride.org. Thank you. And also, Kara Solutions. Focus on your passion. Let Kara handle the rest. Administrative, business, and consulting services for dreamers, visionaries, entrepreneurs, faith, and community-based organizations. Go to her website. That is www.kara-solutions.com. Another thing she's offering, if you have any technological problems, if you need to know how to work Zoom, if you need to know how to work Restream, if you need to know how to work StreamYard, she is available for a fee. And so please contact Kara Solutions. Thank you. If you want to advertise with Beyond the Gatekeepers, please, please, please contact us at beyondthegatekeepershow@gmail.com. Lastly, finally, but not least, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight on Facebook Live and YouTube. Please support this effort and future broadcasts by sending a donation via Cash App to $TFAM Annual. That's $TFAM Annual. Tonight, our intro and outro credits are Time for a Change by Al Turner. Thank you again for joining us. Have a great, great night.